Shalom, almost Happy New Year. It's nice to see everybody on Zoom and everybody here in this room. So we'll start with our traditional song of welcoming, Hine Matov, which can be found on page 10. Hine Matov u'manai, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine Matov u'manai, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine Matov, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine Matov, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine Matov u'manai, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine Matov u'manai, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine Matov, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine Matov, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine Matov u'manai, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine Matov u'manai, shevet achim gam yachad. Shabbat Shalom, and I just want to say at the top, I am very thrilled to be joined by Mr. Andy O'Connell, accompanying me on his guitar, and Josh Cohen for his technical brilliance, as well as some percussion action in the background. I appreciate y'all. It makes me feel truly accompanied. Shabbat Shalom. If you want to grab Sidurim on the cart right there, and feel free to sit anywhere. So I would like to take a moment for us to ground ourselves in the here and now, getting ourselves ready, mind, body, and spirit, to welcome Shabbat, to step into that palace in time, as Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel calls Shabbat, this separate opportunity to put our to-do lists aside and enter into another state of being, of purely being. So I would love for everybody to take a moment to find a comfortable place in their seats, and closing your eyes if you feel comfortable, or just letting your eyes rest on something, on a spot a few feet in front of you that's not moving. Placing your feet flat on the floor as you're able, and letting your palms rest open on your lap. Turning your attention to the natural rhythm of your breath, and noticing if there's any tension in your body that you can send a little energy and a little love to. Maybe a twinge in your back or your shoulder or your neck, or a tightness in your jaw or your chest. Maybe letting your shoulders roll up and back and down. And taking a moment to take stock of your week, thinking back to where you were at this moment 1 week ago. We were welcoming in Hanukkah. And as the week progressed, enjoying more and more and more light each night. And at this darkest time of the year, that light makes a whole lot of difference. And even though Hanukkah has ended, how might we bring that light forward? That physical light, sure, but that proverbial, emotional, spiritual light that the lights of the menorah remind us of, that each of us carry inside of us, that our Shabbat candles remind us each week. We carry that light in us all the time. And the rabbis say it burns just a little bit brighter, shines a little bit clearer on Shabbat. So I invite you over our time together this evening, or through the rest of your night, or even if you do so choose for the rest of the 25 hours of Shabbat. Do what you can to think about that light. Call that light into your life and into the lives of the people you love who need it the most right now. Turning your attention back to your breath. And bringing your awareness back into this room, fluttering light back into your eyes if they've been closed, wiggling your fingers and toes, bringing movement back into your body, back into this space as we officially, formally begin to welcome Shabbat together. We'll do so with our candle blessings on page 2, and I would love to invite up Becca Cohn. Safety first. So we're going to sweep that Shabbat light in towards us 3 times. Cover our eyes, reciting the blessing together. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Thank you. We will continue with Shalom Aleichem on page 24. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharei, Malachei Elyon, Imelech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu,
רועכם לשלום, מלאכי השלום, מלאכי עליון, מי מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. ברכוני לשלום, מלאכי השלום, מלאכי עליון, מי מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. צאתכם לשלום, מלאכי השלום, מלאכי עליון, מי מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. הקדוש ברוך הוא. הקדוש ברוך הוא.
As we begin the process of welcoming in Shabbat, traditionally we do so with a series of 7 psalms known as Kabbalat Shabbat. And we'll sing a small sampling of those, starting with the first few lines on page 13. Shir Hadash, sing unto God all the earth a new song. I will sing unto God a new song. This notion that comes to us reminds us that while the words on the page, the rituals that we gather to do remain the same every time we come to do them and come to read them or come to experience them, that each time we approach them differently by virtue of time passing, our growth, our experience, and they have the power and opportunity to take on new meaning each and every time we encounter them.
Shiru l'Adonai kol haaretz, Shiru l'Adonai shir chadash, Shiru l'Adonai kol I will sing unto God a new song. Sing unto God and we'll all sing along. All the earth a new song unto God. Shiru l'Adonai kol haaretz, Shiru l'Adonai shir chadash, shir chadash, shir chadash.
4 lines up from the bottom on that same page, and with the translation on page 14 in the bottom English paragraph, Ya'aloz Sadai, V'chol asher bo az yirananu kol atzei ya'ar. The fields and everything exalt God. Then shall all the trees in the forest shout for joy. Shabbat is a celebration not only of our opportunity that we take to rest, to be, but also we acknowledge the glory and true beauty of creation all around us, so much so that the rabbis who came in the generations before us imagine not only do we celebrate Shabbat, but the entire natural world celebrates Shabbat, down to the trees and the fields and everything in the world. It's a beautiful, beautiful image. And for those of us who connect deeply to nature, it's a truly connective vision of what Shabbat could be for us. So again, the words for Ya'alos Sadai are at the bottom of page 13.
Ya'alos Sadai v'kol asher bo Ya'alos Sadai ay 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 Ya'alos Sadai v'kol asher bo Ya'alos Sadai ay 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 az yiranenu kol hatzei
We turn now to page 20 and 21 for Lachadodi, the formal official welcome of Shabbat into our midst, personified as a bride or a queen by the mystical rabbis who gave us this particular ritual. So as a community, we will sing together verses 1, 2, 5, and 9. And once we get to the beginning of verse 9, we will rise and face the doors to physically embody that welcoming as we would a bride, feeling that moment of awe and splendor and wonder as she comes into our midst. So this might be a new tune for some folks, but it was the Nigun that we opened with. It's by Joey Weisenberg. So we'll do a couple verses of Nigun, Yaidarai, and then we'll go into the words on your pages, but feel free to keep Yaidaraiing if the words are not speaking to you or not familiar to you yet, however it is that you feel called to participate. I would love to just hear your voices.
Olecha dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekavela. Olecha dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekavela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad ishmiyanu el hameyuchad Adonai echad u'shemo echad l'shem multiferet v'litila. Olecha dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekavela. Olecha dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekavela. Verse 2. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nitza ki mekor haberacha merosh mikedem nesucha sof maseh b'makshava tchila. Olecha dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekavela. Olecha dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekavela. Verse 5. Shabbat nekavela. Please rise. Boni v'shalom ateret bala gam besimcha uvetzola tochem unei am segula bo ichala. Olecha dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekavela. Olecha dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekavela. You may be seated.
On page 71, you find another one of our Shabbat songs, Ma Gadlu Ma'asecha Ya. Drawing again on the notion of the celebration of creation on Shabbat. How amazing it is that we are. So as the calendar year winds down, 'tis the season for traveling. Even in spite of COVID and the insanity of the Southwest debacle this week, over the last week and the coming week, the national travel averages will be back to pre-pandemic levels. AAA estimates 113 million Americans will journey 50 miles away from home or more. And on top of the stress of travel, seasonal depression, pressures of social obligations and family tensions, financial concerns, etc., this all makes this time of year a struggle for many, many, many people. And speaking of long-distance travel and high-stakes family reunions, these are the very central elements of this week's Torah portion, Parshat Vayigash, the second to last portion in the book of Genesis. The Parsha picks up in medias res, having left off last week with Joseph's brothers' arrival in Egypt to appeal to Pharaoh's court from relief from the famine plaguing the entire region, from which Egypt was spared thanks to Joseph's prophetic interpretation of Pharaoh's dream nearly a decade earlier. It's been more than 20 years since Joseph was sold into slavery by his brothers, and knowing his brothers will never recognize him, Joseph initially plays a pretty dirty trick on them. He plants a goblet in the satchel of the youngest brother, Benjamin, who also happens to be Joseph's full brother, and then catching the supposed thief as the brothers try to leave, declaring that as punishment, Benjamin must remain in Egypt as a slave. So this is where this week's Parsha picks up. Judah, not the oldest of Jacob's sons, but the one who has been appointed leader, approaches Joseph, or as he sees him, this big, powerful advisor to Pharaoh, to beg for mercy, both for his baby brother, asking that he be taken in Benjamin's place, and for mercy for their father, for the pain of losing Benjamin, his wife Rachel's only other son, after losing Joseph, would surely kill him. Judah recounts the brothers' version of the story of Joseph's death, that he was torn apart by wild beasts and never seen again. And upon hearing about his own demise, Joseph demands to be left alone with his brothers, whereupon he reveals himself, and they have a very teary reunion. The biblical text recounts, Joseph's sobs were so loud that the Egyptians could hear, and so the news reached Pharaoh's palace. Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Is my father still well? But his brothers could not answer them, for they were dumbfounded. When Joseph said to his brothers, come forward to me, and they came forward, he said, I am your brother Joseph, he whom you sold into Egypt. Now do not be distressed or reproach yourselves because you sold me back then. It was to save life that God sent me ahead of you. Then the brothers head back to Canaan, back home, to fetch Jacob and the rest of the family to eventually relocate everybody to Egypt. Now we might wonder how Joseph was able to so quickly forgive his brothers for what they did to him. Was Joseph just a better person or more resilient than most people? Or was he just so in tune with and accepting of the notion that this was all part of God's plan, that he could see past his own hurt the very moment that he reunited with his brothers? Although they don't say it in these exact terms, the biblical authors and the rabbis knew that, as I often like to say, hurt people hurt people. And rather than assuming we would figure it out for ourselves, because let's be honest, for most of us, this is not our strong suit, they did all sorts of thinking and writing and ritual creation to help us out. When we think about forgiveness, many of us tend to think about the rituals of the high holidays and the process of teshuvah. But this inner and interpersonal work is possible on a day-to-day basis. And according to pieces of Jewish wisdom, it's even required on a day-to-day basis. According to the Mishnah Torah, one of, if not the most organized, comprehensive, and influential works of Jewish law, composed in Egypt around 1178 CE, it says, it is forbidden for a person to be cruel and not make amends. Instead, a person should be easily appeased and slow to anger. And at the moment when the sinner asks for forgiveness, forgive with a whole heart and a desirous spirit. And even if they pained you and sinned against you many times, you should not take revenge or hold a grudge. That is the way of the children of Israel, and libam hanachon, their correct or uprightness of heart or spirit. Now, the Mishnah Torah came much later in Jewish history than Joseph. And I think Joseph's ability to meet his brothers as he did with that kind of compassion and that kind of forgiveness was that he knew, or maybe was acculturated within his community, to believe, as the Bible teaches us, both here but more explicitly in Leviticus, in Parshat Kedoshim, which will come to be known as the Holiness Code, the foundation of Jewish ethical and communal law and practice. You shall not take vengeance or bear a grudge against your kin. Love your neighbor as yourself. And why is this so important? Certainly not to teach us that we should just be doormats letting people walk all over us, but rather that we should first love ourselves, embrace our own humanity before we can see the humanity and have love for others. Joseph serves as our biblical archetype for using this lens of forgiveness to look at the world, at his relationships, and especially with those who hurt him the most. German Jewish social psychologist and philosopher Erich Fromm, who fled the Nazis and settled in the US, wrote a book called The Art of Loving in 1956. In it, he draws on this biblical notion of loving our neighbor as ourself by first naming that it is a logical fallacy that love for others and love for oneself are mutually exclusive. He writes, if it is a virtue to love my neighbor as a human being, it must be a virtue and not a vice to first love myself, since I am a human being too. There is no concept of the human in which I myself is not included. A doctrine which proclaims such an exclusion proves itself to be intrinsically contradictory. The idea expressed in the biblical love thy neighbor as thyself implies that respect for one's own integrity and uniqueness, love for and understanding of one's own self cannot be separated from respect and love and understanding for another. The love for my own self is inseparably connected with the love for any other being or person. As Fromm points out, loving ourselves is necessary in order to be able to love others and to meet them lovingly with forgiveness and with compassion. And this kind of love, this kind of openness, as Joseph demonstrates with his brothers, is a deeply vulnerable act. Vulnerability, like forgiveness, is often, I think, interpreted as weakness in our culture. But thank God, the rabbis, as well as modern sages like Brene Brown, are here to remind us that they are actually incredible strengths, enabling us connective potential, leading us to fulfilling relationships and fulfilling lives. In her viral TED Talk on the power of vulnerability, Brene Brown discusses her doctoral research on resilience, where she found, seemingly paradoxically, that the most resilient people are willing to be vulnerable. And importantly, they have the courage to be vulnerable. Here she instructs for a separation between courage and bravery. Courage, she says, the original definition, when it came to the English language, came from the Latin cor, or heart. And the original definition was to tell the story of who you are with your whole heart. She said these folks had, very simply, the courage to be imperfect. They had the compassion to be kind to themselves first and then to others, because, as it turns out, we can't practice compassion for other people if we can't treat ourselves kindly. And last, she said, these people, these amazing, resilient people, had connection, and this is the hard part. As a result of authenticity, they were willing to let go of who they thought they should be in order to be who they were, which you absolutely have to do in order to create meaningful, sustainable connections with others. So these people embraced vulnerability. They believed that what made them vulnerable made them beautiful. And they didn't talk about vulnerability being comfortable, nor did they talk about it being excruciating. They just talked about it being necessary. They talked about the willingness to say, I love you first, the willingness to do something and tease, the willingness to breathe through waiting for the doctor to call you after a test, the willingness to invest in a relationship that may or may not work out. These were fundamental aspects of these people's resilience. And I believe that Joseph was an incredible example of this. And without knowing it or meaning to, his story laid the foundation for thinkers like Erich Fromm and Brene Brown, and the notion that being vulnerable, that approaching even the people who hurt us the very most with openness and empathy, of releasing hurt and being willing to forgive, made that room for opportunity and made possible that incredible tikkun, this deeply necessary repair of this very fractured family, ultimately bringing the Israelites to Egypt, where they would survive the famine and live for hundreds of years. So with all of that in mind, I'll close with a blessing. May Joseph's actions serve as a reminder for all of us, especially at this moment when many are in the throes of seasonal woes, but when also many are making New Year's resolutions and setting intentions for the year ahead, that instead of holding on to hurt, instead of drinking the poison of hate, of anger, that we might let it go or do what we can to loosen our grip on it just a little bit, taking those steps towards self-love, forgiveness, and reconciliation, that we may have the courage to be vulnerable and to be open to whatever comes our way in 2023. Shabbat Shalom. We will continue with the on page 28. Please rise as you are able.
Baruch hu et Adonai hamevorach. Baruch Adonai hamevorach leolam vaed. Baruch Adonai hamevorach leolam vaed.
You may be seated. We'll now make our way through the beginning, opening blessings of Ma'ariv, Ahavat Olam, into the Shema and Ve'ahavta, drawing on the notions of the love and compassion that we all carry inside of us, but also with which this world was divinely created. Page 32.
Ahavat olam beit Yisrael amcha avta Torah u'mitzvot chukim u'mishpatim otanu lemadeta al kein Adonai Eloheinu v'shochmeinu nasiach bechukecha v'nismach b'divrei Toratecha u'b'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed ki hem chayenu ve'orech yameinu ve'orech yameinu uvahem nege yomam v'layla ve'avatcha al tasir mimenu le'olamim baruch atah Adonai ohev amo Yisrael.
Page 34.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed.
Page 36.
Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha v'chol levavcha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol me'odecha ve'hayu ha'devarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha Veshinantam levanecha, v'dibarta bam, v'shivtecha b'veitecha, uv'lechtecha v'derech, uv'shachbecha uv'kumecha. Ukshartam leot al yadecha, v'hayu letotafot bein einecha, uktavtam al mezuzot beitecha u'visharecha. Leman tizkeru, v'asitem et kol mitzvotai, v'tem kedoshim le'elohechem. Ani Adonai Elohechem, asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim, liot lachem le'elohim. Ani Adonai Elohechem, Adonai Elohechem emet.
We turn to page 40 for Micha Mocha, our biblically derived song of freedom that the Israelites sang on the shores of the sea upon the moment of their exodus from Egypt. Yep. On page 42 and 43, we come to Hashkivenu, the nighttime or bedtime prayer for peace, for protection. And there's a beautiful melody written by Noah Aronson, an awesome Jewish musician, using the words from the poem at the top of page 43, "Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms." Hashkivenu references a Sukkot Shalom, a shelter of peace that we pray might cover us, protect us during this night, during any moment of true vulnerability, that we might make it through to the other side. So we will sing together.
Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Hashkivenu, Adonai Eloheinu. Hashkivenu leshalom. Hashkivenu, Adonai Eloheinu. Hashkivenu
We turn now to page 46 for the beginning of the Amidah, the Tefillah, the standing prayer. And we will recite the first 3 pages after that together. And then you will have some time for silent prayer or silent meditation, during which you can feel free to be guided by the words on the page, by the words in your heart. You can remain standing at that time or take your seat and close your eyes, whatever it is you need. This is your time for your spiritual journey. So we will rise as we are able together on page 46.
Adonai sefatai tiftachu fi agi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, v'Elohei avoteinu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei hakol, v'zocher chastei avot v'imahot, u'mevi geula livnei v'neihem, le'ma'an shemo be'ahava, melech ozer u'moshia u'magen, Baruch atah Adonai, magen Avraham, be'ezrat Sarah, atah gibor le'olam Adonai, mechaye hakol atarav lehoshia, Mashiv haruach umorid hagashem, mechalkei hachayim bechesed, mechaye hakol berachamim rabim, somech noflim verofeh cholim, umatir asurim, umekayem emunato lishenei afar. Michamocha ba'al gevorot, umido melech, melech meimit umechaye, umatzmiach Yeshua, v'ne'eman atah lachayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, mechaye hakol. Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, U'kadoshim b'chol yom yahalelu chasela, Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el hakadosh. Please continue silently. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל.
At this time, it is our community's custom to say Mishaberach L'cholim, the prayer for healing for the sick. So we call to mind those in our lives who are in need of healing, whether of body, mind, or spirit. And as I was told earlier this week, something that Rabbi Lipoff used to say that I really appreciated learning was that, when it comes time for the Mishaberach, we can only hope that our prayers reach the people who need them, have the impact that we're hoping that our words and our intentions and our energy will have. But this is also an opportunity to serve as a reminder for us to be that healing force, to pick up the phone or send that text to the people that we're thinking of, because just from hearing from us, you never know what the impact is going to be, and it might be just the thing that that person needs at this moment. So with that in mind, at this time, our community is thinking of Sharon Froome, Julia Berkman, Carolyn Coney, Harvey Solomon, Joseph Siegel, Linda Hoffman, Esther Neshama, Karen Weber, Judy Shepro, Israel Beryl Ben Galia Rachel Velabel Yankel, Dalia Bat Miriam, Chaim Mesha, and Cassandra Warshawski. In addition to that, feel free to share the name of somebody that you are thinking of as my hand comes around the room. And for those who are joining us virtually, feel free to drop a name in the Zoom chat.
Robin Levine.
And on Zoom, yes, Jamie Raskin.
Oh,
Yeah, thank you. Let's see. Esther Fine, Sylvia Rotten, Liesel Allen, Susan, Jerry, Richard, the Henderson Beeler family, and Brandon and Maureen, Peter Croyle and Roland Hartnack. The Mishaberach can be found on page 253. For all those we've named, for those names we hold in our hearts and our minds, we send this prayer. Mishaberach Avoteinu Mekor May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Mishaberach Imoteinu Mekor Havracha Le'avoteinu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. We turn now as a community to page 282 for Aleinu L'Shabeach. We will be reading from the top paragraph on 282. Please rise as you are able. Aleinu L'Shabeach Ladon Hakol, Lateit Gerula Liotzer Breshit, Shehu Notef Shamayim Ve'oser Aretz, Umashav Yekaro Bashamayim Himal, Ushchinat Uzo Begov Meromim, U Eloheinu Ein Od, V'anachnu Korim, Umishtachavim Umodim, Lifnei Melech, Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. 287. V'nemar V'haya Adonai Lemelech al kol haaretz Bayom Ahu Yeh Adonai Echad U'Shemo Echad. You may be seated. The light of life is a finite flame. Like the Shabbat candles, life is kindled, it burns, it glows, it is radiant with warmth and beauty. But soon it fades, its substance is consumed, and it is no more. In light we see, in light we are seen. The flames dance, and our lives are full. But as night follows day, the candle of our life burns down and gutters. There's an end to the flames. We see no more and are no more seen, yet we do not despair, for we are more than a memory, slowly fading into the darkness. With our lives, we give life. Something of us can never die. We move in the eternal cycle of darkness and light, darkness and death, of light and life. The Kadishia tome, the Mourner's Kaddish, is on page 294. Our community's yahrzeit list is up on the Zoom screen, and I would like to invite anybody who is observing a period of mourning, whether it's the anniversary of the passing of a loved one, or if you're just thinking of someone who passed away at this time, around this time, feel free to share their name and their relationship with you. Yeah, Sid. And if there's anybody on Zoom. Great. Sasha's cousin, Brendan Jacob Whitaker. Spence is remembering Amy Nappersteck. And Dorothy's beloved grandfather, Martin Weilheimer. Whether you are in a period of mourning, whether we are observing a yahrzeit or not, as a community, is our custom to rise for Mourner's Kaddish on page 294 in support of those who are in mourning. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei rabbah Be'alma divrach yirteh v'yamlich malchuteh b'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chaye dechol beit Yisrael b'agala uvizman kariv imru amen Yehei shmei rabbah mivarach leolam ulamei almaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitale v'yithalal shemei dekudsha brichu Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechamata da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom alinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us, to all Israel, and to all who dwell on earth, to which we say, Amen. You may be seated. So again, Shabbat Shalom. It's nice to see you all. So a couple of announcements before we move to close. Please join me tomorrow morning at 10:30 on Zoom for Shabbat Torah study. We will be revisiting a little bit of a character who comes up in this week's Parsha, who I talked about way back, I think like my first couple weeks here, Serach Bat Asher. She's one of my favorite characters that most people have never heard of in the Torah. She's a fantastic figure, and I hope that y'all will join me in the morning for that. The TOS office will be closed on Monday in observance of the new year. And next week, we will be picking right back up with our regularly scheduled programming. On Thursday, Rabbi Berkman will have her Torah for the Heart and Mind class on Zoom. We'll be back here next Friday, January 6th at 6 p.m. for Kabbalat Shabbat services in person and virtually. And please join us next Saturday, the 7th, starting at 10:30 for Shabbat morning services with Shir Chadash, both in person and virtually. Please let us know if you have any questions. We look forward to seeing you and studying with you and celebrating with you into the new year. We are going to say Kiddush and Motzi and officially close out our service. The blessings are on page 4 and 5. Please rise.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kishanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu b'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu Zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit Ki hu yom techila lemikraye kodesh Zecher letziat Mitzrayim Ki vanu v'acharta Ve'otanu kidashta Im kol hamim B'shabbat kodshecha be'ahava uvratzon inchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh haShabbat. Amen. Chaim.
And Motzi, once we sing our closing song, you can feel free to come and snag yourselves a piece.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen.
So we are going to close with Oseh Shalom, words of peace, wishing you all a peaceful but also happy and healthy, importantly, new year. And we'll see y'all in 2023. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Thanks again to Josh and Andy and